Right now we're going to show you something very unusual. It comes from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and it has to do with the space shuttle, and CNN's Tom Mintier has the very latest on this very unusual occurrence. Tom?
Patrick, who would have ever thought there would be icicles hanging from the space shuttle on the launch pad in Florida? But it's something that's occurred this morning. We have something even stranger. Here is a shot we're going to show you of 8 members of an ice team. They are working on the launch pad now, clearing away the icicles so they can hopefully go ahead with their scheduled launch time of 11:38 Eastern Time. You can see the men down at the right base of the shuttle. They are moved into the area. They will stay there probably for the next 10 or 15 minutes, knocking off the icicles that have been on the launch pad. Once again, 11:38 Eastern Time. That is the new scheduled time for the launch. We will update you, of course, if that changes. Patrick and Molly?
Oh. Tom, thank you very much. I could almost do that. I've gotten some practice the last couple of days, straight from the old windshield.
You need a white suit, though. That's this hour of the Day Watch. Thanks, everybody. I'm Molly McCoy.
I'm Patrick Greenlaw. Thank you for watching. Day Watch continues right after this.
Congressional leaders meet with President Reagan as he prepares to address them and the nation tonight, his State of the Union address.
This is Day Watch on CNN for Tuesday, January 28th. With Reed Collins in Washington, Marianne Laughlin and Bob Kane in Atlanta, and Lynn Brown in New York.
Good morning. The unseasonably cold weather in Dixie is affecting even the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Its 7-member crew now has been on board since early this morning, waiting for liftoff, delayed for more than an hour and a half by technical and then weather-related problems. However, NASA officials say they have determined that icicles on the launch pad do not present any real problem, and they'll attempt to get the shuttle off the ground a little more than half an hour from now. When it finally does lift off, Challenger's mission includes the deployment of a shuttle communications satellite and the first teacher astronaut, Christa McAuliffe, from space, perhaps refrigeration lessons. President Reagan's putting the last-minute touches to his State of the Union address to be delivered to Congress and the nation tonight. It's going to be slightly different this year, shorter, more general, with the president expected to discuss the nation and the role of government and its relationship to it. But putting together that speech has kept the White House staff at odds for days, and CNN's Frank SESNO reports from the White House.
It's that time of year again, time for the president to report to the nation and to Congress on where we've been and where we're heading.
This will be my 5th State of the Union address. Almost getting to be old hat.
But there's a new feather in this old hat. State of the Union 1986 will not focus on legislative prerogatives. It will be shorter, about 20 minutes, and it will be what aides describe as visionary and thematic. In other words, it will be short on substance. The president has been practicing for over a week in appearances before private sector groups.
We've got to get government in shape for the 21st century. And one of the ways that we plan to do that is by getting government out of activities it can no longer afford or shouldn't have been doing in the first place.
Cutting government spending will be the president's drumbeat, and he plans as accompaniment a chorus of encouraging economic statistics. But on other issues, the president's advisors engaged in a full-scale tug of words as they attempted to craft his speech. The original draft tackled such issues as abortion and the Soviet threat, too controversial and confrontational for Chief of Staff Ronald Reagan, who ordered one of his aides to rewrite the speech, taking out the offending passages. Blander but better, Reagan thought, yet an official described that second draft as deadly dull. Hardline conservatives in the White House, led by Communications Director Pat Buchanan, were incensed, and after a direct appeal to Reagan, got another crack at the speech. They put the ideology back in, but toned it down. White House insiders say the flap over the drafting of the State of the Union was very acrimonious before a compromise version was finally hammered out. In the end, the protectors of the Reagan rhetoric appear satisfied. Says one, the president is not going to dodge anything. Frank SESNO, CNN, the White House.
And CNN will carry the State of the Union address live beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, that's 6 p.m. Pacific. The Senate's Veteran Affairs Committee is holding hearings at this hour on the issue of POWs and MIAs in Indochina. The chairman of the committee, Frank Murkowski, recently led a congressional delegation on a trip into Vietnam and Laos. He says both governments are ready to do all they can to return American bodies and to resolve this question, whether there are servicemen still alive.
On the issue of live sightings, the delegation was told, and I might add rather emphatically, that neither Vietnam nor Laos governments are holding American servicemen against their will. We were advised that it is entirely possible that Americans are in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia illegally and or of their own volition, but that no one was under their control.
Later today, the committee will hear testimony from people who claim to have seen missing servicemen alive in Indochina in the last year.
The New England Patriots are facing a more formidable opponent than the Chicago Bears. A drug scandal is rocking the Patriot organization. Hours after his team was thrashed by the Bears in Sunday's Super Bowl, Pats coach Raymond Berry admitted there is serious cocaine abuse among team members. Berry says up to 12 players are involved. None has been identified, but the Boston Globe says they include 4 starters. To combat the problem, the team's players' union has voted to accept voluntary drug testing administered by Patriot officials. 7 Pats opposed the plan, and there were several abstentions, but the Globe reports the majority approved. That makes the team the first in the league. The NFL's Players Association has long opposed spot drug testing or any type of urinalysis, except in problems with individual players. Geraldine Ferraro has offered to step in temporarily if Queensborough President Donald Maness resigns. Maness is expected to leave his post after being accused of taking bribes to sell city contracts. Ferraro says she wants to provide stability for the shaken Queens Democratic Party. The former vice presidential candidate also added she would accept the job without pay if city officials vote her in. A New York City official called her candidacy premature, but says she will be considered for the job.
L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, is reported dead. Scientology officials say he died of a stroke Friday night. CNN's Dan Hackle looks at the controversial author and philosopher.
Scientology officials said the 74-year-old Hubbard died of a stroke last Friday at his ranch in California. An announcement was made by the current president of the Church of Scientology International, Heber Jench.
As he indicated that he discarded the body, and he wanted the ashes to be spread at sea. This was in keeping with his particular wish and his will. And so that was carried out.
Church officials said Hubbard had not controlled the organization and its corporations for the past few years. In 1982, Hubbard's son, Ronald DeWolf, filed suit claiming Hubbard was either dead or mentally incompetent. After a letter from Hubbard saying he was in seclusion by choice, a judge in 1983 ruled Hubbard alive. There were other legal tangles with local and federal authorities over the years, ranging from tax exemption questions to burglary charges. Throughout it all, however, Hubbard remained in seclusion. At its peak, church officials claimed 6 million members, but defectors said no more than 2 million people had joined the organization. Dan Hackle, CNN.
The Air Force has charged one of its enlisted men with espionage. Bruce Ott, arrested last week in Davis, California, the site of Beale Air Force Base. A spokesman says Ott, who is 25, is suspected of leaking defense information. The Air Force won't say what the information was or who got it. Ott was a clerk in the orderly room of the 1st Strategic Reconnaissance Squadron. A congressional investigator accuses the Pentagon of rigging tests to win funding for the Bradley fighting vehicle. Each Bradley costs $1.5 million, and Congress has already approved ordering nearly 3,000 of them. But a staff member of the House Armed Services Committee says that decision should be reconsidered because the Bradley was not tested under realistic battlefield conditions. His report will be released later today. It also contains criticism of other multi-billion-dollar weapon systems.
A Miami maintenance company is poised for an FAA inspection today. Aerothrust Corporation was cited last week for improperly overhauling 27 Pratt & Whitney JT-8D jet engines. Those engines are used in many commercial airliners. The FAA says no accidents or injuries are blamed on the maintenance snafus, but it ordered immediate repairs of the engines and inspections of 77 others. Aerothrust notified the FAA early this month after a subcontractor admitted he failed to look for and repair engine cracks. A faulty JT-8D engine was blamed for the fatal crash in Manchester, England last August. Canadian investigators have concluded a bomb blast sent an Air India jet plummeting into the Atlantic last June, killing all 329 people aboard. A government report says there is evidence the bomb exploded in the forward cargo compartment. That report traces the blast to a suitcase checked onto the flight by a man with a Sikh name. The man did not board the plane. The Indian government and the Boeing company said yesterday they believed a bomb caused the crash, but they disagreed on where the bomb was placed.
California Congresswoman Bobby Fiedler made a court appearance yesterday on charges that she had tried to pay a political rival to drop out of a race. She won a postponement of her arraignment on those charges. CNN's Jim Thomas reports.
Congresswoman Fiedler was back in court Monday to be arraigned on charges that she allegedly offered political opponent Ed Davis $100,000 to drop out of a Republican primary race. But Fiedler's attorneys were successful in obtaining a postponement for the second time because they say they have not yet reviewed the text of secretly recorded conversations that took place at Fiedler's home. In an article published in the Los Angeles Times, a Times source claims that Ed Davis' campaign manager, Martha Zilm, was wired for sound when she visited with Fiedler and the Congresswoman's top aide, Paul Clark, January 12th. It was the conversation on that tape that reportedly convinced the grand jury to indict Fiedler and Clark on state election code violation.
I know what I said, and I know that I did not say what they're claiming.
Fiedler's attorneys say they may also seek to have the indictment thrown out because one of the jury members was biased against Fiedler. Jury member Dr. Richard Ferraro had served with Fiedler in the past on the Los Angeles School Board, and the two had often been at odds.
Well, I'm looking forward to a thorough examination of exactly what his involvement was in terms of the grand jury. I was very shocked to find out that he was on it because obviously we worked together for a very long time. It would be extremely difficult for him to give any kind of an objective opinion.
Fiedler also accused Los Angeles District Attorney Ira Reiner of using her indictment as a smokescreen to draw attention away from what she says was his bungling of the McMartin preschool child molestation case.
This was a way of diverting attention from what he had done in the McMartin case and served as an extremely convenient vehicle for him.
Fiedler's top aide, Paul Clark, also named in the indictment, continues to insist the situation is having a minimal effect on Fiedler's campaign for the nomination to oppose Alan Cranston for his California Senate seat. Jim Thomas, CNN, Los Angeles.
Next this morning, as Day Watch continues, Nick Gregory will join us with the latest coast-to-coast weather forecast.
We will also be telling you how Florida citrus farmers fared during what was for Florida a very cold night.